Hello and welcome to the channel Windows versus Linux. In the last video we looked at creating a Linux Mint bootable device either on a CD or a flash drive and then booting into a Linux Mint live environment. So in this video we're going to expand on that a little bit, and I'm going to take you through kind of a mini tour of Linux Mint and show you where some things are and how to access certain things. So we'll go ahead and start. What you're seeing here is the live environment of Linux Mint. This is running off a flash drive on a Windows 10 computer. And like I said previously, any changes that you make in Linux Mint live environment will not be saved. So you can install programs, you can create Word documents, you can pretty much do whatever you want and it will not affect your current system. So if I were to restart this system, unplug that flash drive, I would be booted back into Windows 10 with all my files safe, all my programs safe. So this is basically just a testing ground for Linux Mint. So as you can see, we have a desktop wallpaper, we have desktop icons, we have a taskbar, and we have some icons on the right here similar to what you would see with Windows 7. So if I were to click the time here, you can see we have a calendar set up. We have our Wi-Fi symbols, our speakers, Bluetooth, pretty much everything that you'd see normally in a taskbar. We have some quick launch icons here for like files. You can see that quickly launches the file navigator. We have a start menu, as you can see, very similar to Windows 7. And if we wanted to change this background, let's say, we could just right click and we have a menu here that we can do some different things. So we'll just go ahead and change the background really quick. So as you can see here, we have Linux Mint wallpapers. These are just the ones standard that come with Linux Mint 19.1. But you also have some wallpapers from previous versions of Linux Mint. So we'll just go through, you can kind of get an idea of what there is. Alright. And if we wanted to change it, we could just change to anything we want. Okay? We'll go ahead and take a quick tour through the software that comes installed. Pretty much everything that you see here is what you will get if you were to install Linux Mint on your machine. So you have things like calculator, disks is pretty much how you would look at the different file systems that are on the computer. For instance, this is my flash drive, CD drive, etc. Okay. We have document viewers, we have fonts where you can look through the different fonts that are installed, an image viewer to look at pictures. This redshift, basically what this is it's a setting you can turn on to help save your eyes if it will load. Basically it takes away most of the blue that you would see with, okay, it is enabled. Not sure why it's not working at the moment, but basically it will take away the blue and replace it with a red, so it kind of helps save your eyes essentially. What else do we got? We have a screenshot where you can take a screenshot of the whole screen, a current window, or if you select a certain area, it will let you take a screenshot of that area. So that's pretty nifty. Okay, we have text editor, which is basically, this is the equivalent of Notepad in Windows. It's basically just your basic text editor. Nothing too fancy. And we have some extra tools here, mostly for some back-end stuff, like if you wanted to create a new Linux flash drive with a different version of Linux, this is what you would use. So if we move down to graphics, you'll see this GNU image manipulation program. This is the GIMP program that I showcased in the previous video, or in one of the previous videos. This is pretty much your Linux equivalent of Photoshop. This does come pre-installed with Linux Mint, so this is what you'll get out of the box. Pix, I actually have not used this. To me it looks just like a picture viewing software, but Again, I could be wrong, I've never really used that. And this simple scan is basically exactly what it is. You can simply scan something into Linux, like a document, for instance. Moving on to Internet, you do get Firefox out of the box. This is the standard web browser that comes pre-installed pretty much with almost any Linux distribution. This is the open source browser that you will get by default. And I'll show you where you can go to get another browser if you do not like Firefox. HexChat is a chat program, essentially. Thunderbird is an email client. This is, I believe this has come standard on Mac OS, on MacBooks, so this is the client that you would get standard out of Linux. Transmission I've never used, so I don't know what that is. If we move down to Office, you will see you have LibreOffice standard out of the box. And again, this is the open source free equivalent of Microsoft Office. So you have Writer, which is your free version of Word. You have Calc, which is spreadsheets. Impress, which is, what's the name of it? The one that does the slideshows. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. But this is all of your Office suite, essentially. And you also have a calendar as well. Sound and video. You have a media player. Rhythmbox is a music player. This I just installed so I could actually record this video because Linux Mint does not have any pre-recording video software out of the box, so this I did install. Universal access, not much to see there. Administration, you have some of the back-end stuff like you have a driver manager, which basically allows you to install proprietary drivers if there is any available. And this is good for if you have things like an NVIDIA graphics card or an AMD graphics card. You can install the drivers for that right here. Install Linux Mint, we'll actually get to that in the next video. I'll actually walk you through the process of installing Linux Mint on your system if you're ready to take that step. Gparted is a partitioning program, which is really good if you want to partition your hard drive for any reason. You can look at power statistics, printers, we might get into in a later video. Printers are very easy to install on Linux in general. Software Manager, we'll talk about that in a minute. Synaptic Packager, or Synaptic Package Manager rather, we'll actually get into in a later video possibly. System Monitor is actually your equivalent of the Task Manager in Windows. You can see all the processes that are running. You can see your resource statistics for the system. So as you can see, I'm using 1.3 gigabytes of memory. There's the CPU usage, etc. Where else am I? Okay. Terminal is something hopefully you'll never need to use. It's basically your equivalent of the command line in Windows in general. It's something a lot of new users shouldn't have to deal with. Some more advanced users will use this because it makes things a little bit quicker. But generally I'm going to try to stay away from this. I know the terminal can be kind of intimidating to new users, so I'll try to avoid this whenever I can. Time shift is your equivalent of creating restore points in Windows. This basically allows you to take a snapshot of the system, so if anything were to go wrong, you could revert to a point in the system where it was actually working. And we'll get into this in a little while. Actually, I'll probably get into this in the next video when I actually show you how to install Linux Mint. Users and groups, you can add and remove users if you so choose. And some more back-end stuff. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you have desk lists is a pretty interesting little thing. You can add like, let's see if I can add one here. So this clock desktop, you can add little widgets to the desktop to kind of help you keep track of things. You can add a photo frame. You can launch a particular program from it. And if you choose to, you can go through and update and download even more if you so desire. And see if there's anything else. Okay, so that looks to be pretty much it for the software. Now, if you do find out sorry, I cannot speak today. If you do find that you do need an extra piece of software that is not installed, you can actually go here to the Software Manager. And this is basically your hub for installing software on Linux Mint. I will get into this in a later video when I compare it to installing programs on Windows. But essentially, installing programs on Linux is like using, if you've ever used the App Store on an iPhone or the Google Play Store, essentially that's how you get programs on Linux. It's like a big app store. But like I said, I'll cover this in a later video and more in detail. And the last thing really I wanted to cover is the settings menu. So if I hover over this thing here, you can see this is system settings. And this is essentially your control panel for Linux. So all of your settings for the computer are stored here. So your backgrounds, that we've already looked at. Effects, you can change different effects of how things work on your windows and such. You can select fonts, you can change the theme. Now Linux Mint does come with quite a lot of themes pre-installed. I can change folder icons, so if I open File Manager you can see I changed the color of the folders. I'll change that back. You can change the way these titles up here are, the task bars or the window bars, whatever you call these up here. You can change those. You can change all kinds of stuff. They have all kinds of different themes in here. If I wanted a blue theme, you can see that's changed this to more of a blue. Okay? And again, if you wanted to add more, you could update this and download even more themes if you so desired. Alright, we have preferences for accessibility, applets, date and time, all that good stuff. One thing I will quickly throw out there as an honorable mention here is Workspaces. Now this is something that Windows does have, but it doesn't have very well. I think it's a lot better implemented in Linux Mint. And basically what it is it allows you, if you only have one screen to work with, it allows you to simulate multiple monitors. But again, I will cover that in a later video. You also have something that's called hotspots. And what hotspots are is if you primarily use a mouse, you can hover over different corners of the screen and it'll do different things. So this top right corner, if I enable that, you can see it's defaulted to show all windows. Okay, so if I have, let's say I'll open a task manager, I'll open a terminal, and if I hover over the top right corner, it gives me a quick overview of every window that I have open. So that is a very nice tool to have to quickly access stuff. The other one I usually turn on is this top left one, which is show all workspaces. So this shows me every workspace that I have open. And again, I will cover this in a later video, but those are the two most useful that I find to have. And again, once you have one enabled, you can change what it does, but those I primarily leave these default. Alright, let's see if there's anything else. System settings, online accounts. If you have any accounts that you want to sync up, you can add any one of these accounts and it will add that account to Linux Mint. So if you were to add a Facebook account, you'll get notifications from Facebook within Linux Mint itself. Okay. Preferred applications, that's essentially your default programs, which you want to open default. Keyboard, you can change shortcuts if you so desire. Bluetooth, you can add Bluetooth devices. And that's pretty much it. Now Linux Mint does come with a firewall pre-installed. This is the firewall. All you have to do is check this status and your firewall is turned on. Very simple, very easy. So that was just a quick tour of Linux Mint. Again, I would encourage you, if you do run a Linux live environment, to play around to your heart's desire. Like I said, you will not break your current system. Now, one thing I would caution you against is going in here and starting to delete stuff, because under this devices, if you can see, this is my Windows installation. So if you go through and you start deleting stuff out of here, you could actually break your Windows 10 installation. So you do want to kind of be careful within the actual file manager. But other than that, you can go through, you can install software, you can remove software if you so desire, you can create Word documents, anything you want, and it will not affect your system. Like I said, this is just a test environment, so you will not break anything by doing so. So I hope that's given you kind of an idea of what Linux Mint is all about. Like I said, it is geared for people coming from Windows, so it should be very user-friendly to you. There is a slight learning curve, but it's nothing too drastic. It's definitely not on par with a lot of the more advanced Linux distributions out there. So like I said, in the next video we'll actually be looking at installing Linux Mint if you're ready to take the plunge and put it on your laptop or your desktop as your primary operating system. So stay tuned for that video, and I'll see you then. Thank you.